Hundreds of scientific discoveries have actively shaped throughout centuries the history of humanity. Yet, some achievements are more memorable than others in the popular culture. Who has never heard of Newton's apple tree or Archimedes' famous Eureka? What made these particular achievements more memorable, apart from their scientific impact, are the stories behind them. And what do these stories have in common? 3 criteria. First, content. A theory of gravity, in Newton's case, and a way for measuring objects' volumes, in Archimedes' one. Second, clarity. These stories illustrate in a very clear way each of these discoveries. What's more clear than the image of an apple falling from a tree, or the water or the displaced water after the immersion of an object? Third, charisma. Both of these stories had a fun element. The apple falling on Newton's head, inspiring a whole new theory, and the image of Archimedes shouting Eureka while running naked in the streets of Syracuse. Today, we are at the University of Zurich, and due to the COVID-19 situation, we'll be virtually filming the semifinals of FameLab, which is a science communication competition that started in the UK in 2005, and since then had spread into different countries. The rules are simple. Participants have 3 minutes to present a scientific topic of their choice. They're not allowed to use any electronic support, so this means no slides, no videos, no audio recordings. They're only allowed to use props if they wish to. Their presentations will be afterwards rated by a jury according to the 3 criteria of content, clarity, and charisma. The selected winners of today will be participating afterwards in the finals, in the FameLab finals, which will take place in Bern. And we're very happy today to have with us for the semifinals a jury that's coming from different backgrounds. So we have with us Dr. Claudine Leisinger, with a background in Latin American history, and she's currently the General Manager Graduate Campus at the University of Zurich. We have as well Professor Sarah Springman, who has a background in civil engineering and is currently serving as Director of ETH Zurich. The third member of our jury is Dr. Petra Betig, with a background in plant biotechnology. She's currently a lecturer at the Zurich University of Applied Sciences. So now that we know the rules of the competition and we've met the jury, I would like to give a big thank to Life Science Zurich, who is the main organizer of FameLab Switzerland, and also to its partners, Bioscience Network Lausanne, Science Islam Basel, and the British Council and Embassy. So now we're ready to start. Best of luck for our participants. We are all very eager to hear your stories.
The king of the jungle. We've all been taught that it's the lion, but a zoologist would be quick to point out that the tiny ant has a far greater claim to jungle supremacy. It's a family of insects that makes up an estimated 1/5 of the total animal biomass on Earth. Ants can form armies, they can cultivate crops, they can cultivate livestock, and if you think an ant can lift up to 10 times its own body weight, think again. A recent estimate puts that at 5,000 times its own body weight. Yes, the lumbering, slumbering lion has nothing on the minuscule but mighty ant. But there is one creature that can be sure to strike fear in the hearts of even this intrepid superorganism, and that is the fungus Ophiocordyceps. An ant infected with Ophiocordyceps begins to act in rather a strange way. It leaves the comfort of its colony and climbs up the stem of a plant, always stopping between 20 and 30 centimeters above the forest floor. This elevation provides the optimal temperature and humidity for fungal growth. The ant will then carry out one final act in the service of its slave master. It will clamp its mandibles shut around a leaf, and suspended there in the grip of death, it will be consumed from the inside, and once deceased, the fungus will sprout from its body. The reproductive organ of the fungus will erupt through the head of the ant and explode, releasing fungal spores across the forest floor to infect yet more ants. Entire colonies can be wiped out by this killer, which, by the way, you can buy as a nutritional supplement from the pharmacy. People make tea from it. I wouldn't. But how is it that this parasitic puppeteer can bend the will of the ant to its own ends? Microscopy shows us that although the musculature of the ant's head is heavily infiltrated with fungal cells, the brain itself is left intact, leading scientists to believe that the fungus is producing messenger molecules which travel through the bloodstream of the ant to the brain. What could these messenger molecules be doing? It seems that a kind of molecular mimicry might be at play. Many of these fungal substances bear a striking resemblance to molecules found naturally in the ant's brain, so-called neurotransmitters such as dopamine. And by mimicking the action of these neurotransmitters, the fungus can induce behavioral changes in the ant. How such specific behavioral changes as biting can be induced is a mystery yet to be unraveled. Now, you may be wondering, can more complex animals, such as, say, humans, also fall under the spell of mind-controlling monsters such as this? And the short answer to that question is yes, and the long answer I would gladly discuss over a steaming cup of tea.
There was nothing. And then, suddenly, an explosion, and the universe began. At that moment, it was very hot and dense soup, like the interior of a star. But because of this explosive expansion, the soup starts to cool down. And some places of the soup were slightly denser than others. And because gravity is always attractive, those places start to attract more and more matter, creating a pattern of buoys and peaks of density that grew over cosmic time, creating a very special structure. In fact, the universe is a giant spider web, a big three-dimensional spider web. Wow! And the threads of that spider web are the filaments of this large-scale structure. And the intersection of those filaments are the densest parts of the universe in which gas gets attracted and collapses into stars, into galaxies, into us. So we astronomers, what we do is we point telescopes at the sky and take pictures of this universe and trying to find this cosmic web, but we don't see the filaments, we just see the galaxies and the stars. So what I try to do in my research is trying to find these filaments, because we believe that they contain most of the matter of the universe, but they don't shine by themselves because they don't form stars. So we try to take a shortcut. So we look for the most brightest objects of the universe, and those are quasars. Quasars are galaxies in which they have a very active nuclei in which the supermassive black hole in the very center heats up the gas around, and there's an explosion of light that illuminates the surroundings. So we tried, and we went to a very nice telescope in my country, Chile. So we take pictures of these quasars, and I was the first one to open those images and look at it. And there they were, the filaments of the cosmic web. I was so happy that I started to run across the corridors of the university yelling, "I found the filaments, I found the filaments." It was amazing. Maybe they thought I was a little bit crazy, but I thought I was very proud of that little girl who was curious about the star, which is still here today, and to all the curious minds that were before me. So we together created this very nice understanding of the universe. We realized that the universe is a giant spider web. Thank you very much.
What do people first think of when they hear the words geothermal energy? Ring a bell? Okay, so let's go simpler. What about geology? You're the guys that study rocks, right? And for years, my response has always been, yes, I study rocks, and it is awesome. But for some reason, people didn't believe me, that it was awesome, that is, or they failed to see the significance of the earth sciences in general. And I have to say, it's our fault. We've kept it a secret, hidden in plain sight. And this is my attempt to fix that. Now, let's go back to geothermal energy. I have this drawing here. And in it, I see a temple situated in the mystic Himalayan foothills, Manigaran Sahib. And from the depths rises heat. Now, legend goes that as the gods Shiva and Parvati were walking through a valley, Parvati dropped her earring, and it was taken into the depths by a serpent. Shiva turned to anger, and to soothe this, the serpent hissed. And as he did, boiling water erupted from the depths, along with many precious stones. More recently, it is believed that as Guru Nanak and Bhai Mardana were on their travels, they were hungry, but had no food to cook with. So the Guru asked Bhai Mardana to lift a stone from the floor, and as he did, steam and hot water erupted, allowing them to cook. People for millennia have pondered the earth's processes, and these legends express how we want to understand. Current research methods in geothermal energy involve studying it from a physical, biological, and chemical standpoint. Hydrothermal fluids are laced with chemical reactions, crystallizations, and concentrations of rare earth elements. There are intricacies in the thermodynamics of fluid flow that affect human-made earthquakes. Geothermal energy has the power to provide us with a baseload supply for electricity and heat. It is a necessary part of our energy future. So there you have it. Geologists have played the role in providing the world with petroleum and natural gas resources to fuel, quite frankly, an unsustainable economy and lifestyle. Now it is our time to use our expertise to help man work with the environment and provide proper geological solutions.
Hi everyone, my name is Abhishek, and I'm here to tell you why shit matters. For that, I'd like you to first meet P and Poo. It's because we've not been able to manage these two properly that over 2 billion people across the world still don't have access to improved sanitation. Now, what that means is that in 2020, 1 of every 4 people still doesn't have access to toilets and hand-washing facilities. Because of this, their drinking water sources get contaminated, leading to diarrheal diseases. And we lose every year about 500,000 children under the age of 5. So if you do the math, by the end of this 3-minute talk, we'd have already lost over 5 lives. And that is just the public health aspect of the problem. Environmental health also takes a big hit because 80% of all the wastewater that we produce is being discharged into the environment without any form of treatment. And this problem is particularly concerning in cities of the global south, because for the first time in human history, there are more people living in urban areas than in rural areas. And this rapid urbanization is happening mainly in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. So, in these high-density cities, there's going to be a lot more of these guys to manage. Now, the conventional solution to this is to just dig up the ground, put in sewers, which transport waste from individual households to a large centralized treatment plant. But such sewer-based solutions require a lot of energy, a lot of money, a lot of water, and of course a lot of space. All 4 of which cities of the developing world don't have in plenty. That is why my research at ETH Zurich and EWAG focuses on planning cities which have non-sewer based solutions, which could be decentralized at a community level, and where we can enable resource recovery of water, energy, and nutrients for your gardens. So, if this is possible, then we can recover about 95% of all that we flush. And to me, that is why shit matters.
So, I want to tell you something about my boyfriend. He is so chemophobic, which means he is irrationally afraid of chemicals. He says he wants to live in a chemical-free world, which is literally impossible. He also believes that natural products do not contain chemicals. He also thinks that it is possible to eliminate or reduce any exposure to chemicals. And so I knew I had to do something about his chemophobia before he spreads his fear onto his Instagram followers and become a cult leader. And so I had two options. The first option was to try to make him feel more positive about chemicals, because the way you feel towards something can help you perceive something different. And so I tried to make him feel more positive about chemicals by showing him a video that shows how with chemicals we were able to develop many products like food, medicine, pharmaceuticals, really anything you could think about. The video was more like of a cheerleader for chemicals, and the cheer goes more something like this. Okay, so ready? Okay. Hey, hey, chemicals, yay, yay, everything is chemicals, beneficial chemicals. Imagine all this cheering in the video and his fear of chemicals did not reduce. So I was frustrated and I went to option 2, which is basically provide him with some basic toxicological knowledge. As a scientist, I was able to do that and he would trust me because I'm a scientist. And so I sat him down and I told him, okay, listen, I know that you think that chemicals of natural origins are like Snow White and synthetic chemicals are like the evil, ugly witch, but that's not valid because from a toxicological point of view, the origin of the chemical is not an indicator of its toxicity. Chemicals, whether synthetic or natural, can be good, but they can also become toxic when triggered, and the trigger is the dose. So just because a toxic chemical is present in a product, it does not mean that it is toxic in the amount present in that product. And guess what? Mission accomplished. His fear was reduced. And I even noticed that he stopped buying some natural products. I don't know about his long-term behavior. We'll wait and see. But, now I'm actually wondering whether I was able to reduce your fear of chemicals just now.
The last few months were quite an emotional roller coaster. I mean, I was worried all the time. I was worried about catching the virus myself. I was worried about my family, my job, politics, and basically the whole horrible situation. But why do we worry so much? What is going on in our brains, and might there be anything to stop us? I think we should look into a group of people who are notoriously known to be resilient to worrying thoughts. Buddhist monks. Over thousands of years, they've perfected a way how to actively manipulate their brain activity and keep themselves from worrying by practicing meditation. So, what is meditation doing to their brains? To find out about that, master meditators were invited into a neuroscientific laboratory and put inside a brain scanner. In there, they were either quietly relaxing or meditating, and the scientists observed their brain activity. So during relaxation, they found a network of brain regions which showed highly synchronized activity. This resting state network is considered to be our mental playground,
because it allows our mind to wander. We can remember things, we plan ahead, and it also helps us to link our thoughts to emotions. But unfortunately, we all as human beings are rather biased to the negative side of emotions, meaning we are all prone to worry. But then, how is it possible that Buddhist monks fight this intrinsic negative bias? Coming back to our study, inside the brain scanner, the master meditators are now switching from relaxation to meditation. And we can observe that there's one specific brain region which is dropping out of the synchronized activity, meaning it stops communicating with the rest of the brain. This region is called the insula, the island, and it is linking a very old and ancient bit of our brain, which creates negative emotions, for example, fear, and it is linking it to a very far advanced bit of our brain, which defines us as people, as personalities, with our own view of the world. So during meditation, we're shutting down the insula and cutting this connection so that we no longer have access to our own negative and worrying feelings. We cannot worry. That is also the reason why meditation is used as an additional treatment in depression disorders. And could it also be the reason for the legendary calmness and wisdom of Buddhist monks? Namaste.
I have to admit something. I was worried that the FameLab semifinals would not take place. And in fact, that's what happened. But in addition, I was worried that none of you would want to hear my talk. It's about viruses. But don't worry, I'm not going to talk about the coronavirus. I'm actually much more interested in viruses that attack bacteria. So my next favorite title would have been The Battle of the Small, since most viruses are smaller than bacteria. In general, there are two types of virus that attack bacteria. Those that directly kill the bacterium and those that have a choice. The latter have a decision to make. Should I kill the bacterium or should I stay within the bacterium and wait? These two options are commonly referred to as the lytic, the killing cycle, and the lysogenic, the waiting cycle. Now, I don't know about you guys, but personally, I'm terrible at making decisions. Having grown keen on balcony gardening throughout the corona time, I'm now always wondering, should I harvest my potatoes? Or should I wait a little longer until more might have grown? It's really difficult to know, not knowing what's in the soil. Now, if the virus has to decide whether to harvest the potatoes or not, ideally it would like to know about the number of potatoes in the soil as well. The number of potatoes being the number of bacteria that are around it could attack next. For the virus, it makes sense to kill the bacterium. If there are many other bacteria around, it could then attack. Because if this is not the case, it will just be stranded without any host, exposed to the forces of nature. And in that case, it would be much cozier to stay within the bacterium and wait. And once the time is right, maybe when more bacteria are around again, it can switch to the lytic cycle and kill the bacterium. Now, viruses are considered non-living particles. They cannot even reproduce themselves, and they shouldn't have a brain. So how can they take such a decision? In 2017, researchers discovered that they can leave molecular messages for each other. And with the help of a small chain of just 6 amino acids, they are talking to each other, saying something like, "A lot of us have been here already, it might be better to wait." So in light of their communication skills, should we maybe reconsider if viruses are in fact alive? What do you think?
This is Joe, and Joe is unconscious on the floor, and there is a syringe next to him. Is he a drug addict? Joe is not that kind of guy. He's a type 1 diabetes patient, and his body does not produce enough insulin. Insulin is a protein hormone. It was discovered about 100 years ago, and it's produced by the beta cells in your pancreas when you eat a meal rich in carbohydrates. The beta cell releases insulin, it goes into your liver and tells it to store glucose, because too much glucose in the blood is not so good. Over a long period of time with high blood glucose, you can damage your blood vessels and have complications like heart attacks, strokes, damage to your nerves, and have even problems in vision. So blood glucose that is too high is not good. And we have insulin, which is a superhero that fights against high blood glucose. But you saw with Joe, also too low blood glucose is not too good. In fact, Joe injected himself with too high of a dose of insulin, and his blood glucose dropped very low, and he lost consciousness. And why is that? Well, our brain feeds almost exclusively on glucose. So we cannot let glucose go too low. And how do we achieve that? Well, there is another superhero. It's called glucagon. It's another peptide hormone, and it fights against too low blood glucose. Glucagon is produced by alpha cells, also in the pancreas, but then this time it goes into the livers and says, release glucose. So you increase your glucose concentration in the circulation. The two of them, glucagon and insulin, are working in harmony together to make sure your blood glucose level stays constant so you don't suffer bad consequences. And if you don't have either of them, you're in trouble, like Joe. So what do? Don't worry about Joe, he's fine. We'll inject him with glucagon or with a high concentration of glucose, and he's back to us. The two hormones, insulin and glucagon, are not the only important hormones in our body. Hormones regulate almost everything, how we behave, how stressed we are, how much we drink, how much we eat. Another very important hormone is leptin. Leptin is produced by the fat cells in our body. We don't want too much fat, so if we have too much fat or adipose tissue, we produce a lot of leptin. Leptin goes into our brain, a little region called hypothalamus, and it's a messenger that signals through. It's a message that signals through its messenger, which is the leptin receptor, and says stop eating. So what happens if you don't have enough leptin? This happens. This is actually how leptin was discovered. A mouse that lacked the leptin gene, and this mouse couldn't stop eating. But if you inject this mouse with leptin, it loses weight. What happens, though, if you do not have the leptin receptor? Well, nothing happens. You inject this mouse, and it doesn't lose weight. So hormones are important and work in harmony to make sure you function well. So don't underestimate them. They're very important for your life. Thank you.
Chemistry and cooking have a lot in common. Think about preparing pizza or baking a cake. You need ingredients, flour, sugar, eggs, which you have to mix together following a list of instructions leading you to the final product, hopefully tasty or at least edible. In the language of chemistry, we have pretty much the same, where the ingredients are called reactants and the products, well, they are the products. Now, you might think that in order to study a chemical reaction, you need to do a laboratory experiment. But that's not the end of the story. You might also do theory and simulations. I am indeed a computational chemist. Namely, I don't sit in a lab, I don't wear a stinky white coat, and I don't use test tubes or pipettes. My cooking tools are algorithms, and my ingredients are not in the form of powders or solutions. They come from physics, with its laws and mathematical formulas, the latter translated into programming languages so that computers can read and execute them. The computational methods we use in chemistry are grounded on rigorous theories, such as quantum mechanics. Here in Zurich, one of the founding fathers of the quantum theory, Erwin Schrödinger, lived and worked. He developed the equation that bears his name, and which provides us with a complete description of any microscopic system. like an atom or a molecule or even a solid. Now, unfortunately, the Schrödinger's equation cannot be solved exactly, except for a few very simple systems, like the hydrogen atom. For the majority of systems of chemical interest, like the ones I am studying, surfaces and interfaces, we need to rely on approximate models, which need to be treated numerically. Still, even this numerical approach can require enormous computational resources. That is why we need to use supercomputers, machines capable of billions and billions of operations per second. In either way, no matter if you prefer coding or working on a laboratory bench, the best recipe to follow is always the same. Carefully choose and mix your ingredients, let the molecules react together, and don't burn what you cook.
So do you think you are in charge of your thoughts and your decision making? Well, think again. Breakthrough research over the last 2 decades in microbiology has actually shown that it is microorganisms that are the rulers of our world. And they're so small we cannot even see them. Now, before you panic and run for your hand sanitizer, let me give you a bit of background on this. In fact, every human hosts a microbiome. That's an estimated 100 trillion tiny little creatures that live inside of us and on top of us. And they're not necessarily bad. In fact, most of it is a symbiotic relationship, so we help each other out. You see, we give them shelter and protection, because when you're a tiny little creature, everybody out there just wants to eat you, so it's really helpful to be inside of us. Now, in return, they pay the rent by doing a lot of important functions for us that our own DNA cannot actually do alone, like they synthesize proteins from fibers, or they help with the production of some vitamins and some hormones. So that's a win-win for all of us, but not only, it actually makes them essential to our body functions, our health, and also our mood. Now, the good news is you're not just given a microbiome at birth and that's it, and either you're lucky or not, but you can actually influence it. It comes down to the community structure, who is actually around. And this community structure comes down to which building blocks and which energy they can find inside of us. And that again comes down to the food that we eat. You see, when you eat low-calorie, non-processed vegetables or grains, you can trigger the little microorganisms that are really good at breaking energy out of somewhere where it's hard to get it out, and their byproducts actually help us by boosting our immune system. Now, on the contrary, if you are on a high-fat, high-sugar diet, which is most of our Western meals, then you stimulate the Homer-Simpson type of bacteria who just love to package calories and store them away into our waistline where we really don't want them. And the last thing is that your food actually contains microorganisms as well, so you can ingest new players and introduce them to the team. Now, this of course goes into positive and negative directions, so it really comes down to your choices. The good news is that this is quite a fast process. As little as one meal can actually have an effect on your microbiome. Now that you have learned about the invisible rulers of our world, I would like to leave you with a challenge to finish off. So from here on, please embrace your microbiome and start to look after it, so that the next time you are tempted by this deliciously looking Big Mac meal, you make a choice that is good for your little guys inside of you and your health, and not only for your pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Zurich FameLab Semifinals. Hope you've added to your repertoire today many new memorable stories. The FameLab finals will take place in Bern in September. They'll also be filmed and available online for you to watch, so stay tuned. The next Zurich semifinals will take place next year in 2021, and hopefully by then with a live audience, less social distancing, and many new stories to tell. Thank you.
And now you must be really curious to know who are actually the 3 candidates that were selected to participate in the FameLab finals. Well, For our jury, composed of Dr. Claudine Leisinger, Professor Sarah Springman, and Dr. Petra Betig, the decision wasn't that easy given the level of presentations we had this year. And the winners are Sarah Kawaja in her talk about the curse of the zombie ant, Abhishek Narayan and his talk about why shit matters, and Gwendoline Schoenfeld in her talk about Buddha's happy brain. We wish them all the best for the FameLab finals that will take place in Bern in September. So stay tuned.